Donald Glover shocked fans with a revelation so heavy, so unexpected, and so raw that the entire atmosphere at Camp Flog Gnaw shifted the moment the words left his mouth. What people thought would be a typical electrifying festival moment became something infinitely more human. The laughter, the cheers, the energy, all of it paused for just a breath. As the man known for constantly reinventing himself peeled back another layer of the mystery that surrounds him. For years, fans, critics, and the industry have tried to understand Donald Glover, a man who slips in and out of identities with a fluidity that almost feels unreal. Actor, rapper, writer, comedian, producer, director, performer. Visionary, but on that night, in front of thousands, he revealed something stripped of all performance. Something that didn't belong to any of the personas. Something that existed only in the quiet, terrifying space between life and death. The crowd was already charged when he walked on stage. The kind of charge that comes from people expecting brilliance, expecting something memorable. But nobody knew they were about to witness a confession that would reshape the narrative. Surrounding one of the most mysterious cancellations in recent music history, nobody knew that behind the silence, behind the carefully worded statements about needing to heal, there was an entire hidden war happening inside Donald Glover's body, a war he barely survived. He began slowly, almost as if feeling out the emotional readiness of the audience. His voice carried a weight that wasn't normally present. Not the playful tone of the comedic Donald. Not the cool detachment of Childish Gambino. Not the intense creative focus of the Atlanta mastermind. This voice was different. It was tired. It was honest. It was speaking from a place he had kept sealed off from nearly everyone. Then he said it. "I had a really bad pain in my head in Louisiana," he told them, his words dropping into the crowd like stones falling through water. "And I did the show anyway." The crowd laughed a little at first, not out of mockery, but because they thought he was setting up a story about touring exhaustion or some wild anthroid mishap. But his tone didn't match the laughter. It was steady, serious, almost eerily calm. "I couldn't really see well," he continued, letting the truth unfold piece by piece. "So when we went to Houston, I went to the hospital and the doctor was like, 'You had a stroke.' For a split second, the world seemed to freeze. A stroke. The word alone felt impossible in connection with him. Donald Glover wasn't someone fans associated with fragility or medical emergencies. His brilliance felt invincible, like it existed in some space beyond the limits that governed ordinary lives. But the reality was brutal. His body had betrayed him. While he was trying to give his fans everything he had, and the first thing I thought, he added with a bittersweet laugh, was like, "Oh, here I am still copying Jamie Foxx." The crowd erupted at that. The tension momentarily softened by the humor. It was classic Glover, even in pain, even in fear, he found a joke. Yet beneath the joke was the undeniable truth. Strokes aren't small. They aren't casual. They aren't something you can just brush off with humor. They are life-altering. They are frightening. They are reminders that no matter how talented or influential or enigmatic you are still housed inside a fragile human body. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. Because while the stroke alone would have been enough to derail an entire tour, he revealed there was more, so much more that fans never knew. He broke his foot. Doctors found a hole in his heart. He needed not one, but 2 surgeries. His body wasn't just sending him a warning. It was shutting down, forcing him to confront the reality he had been avoiding for years. Fans who had wondered why the New World Tour disappeared so suddenly now had their answer. And it was far more devastating than anyone imagined. At the time, his team released statements that were polite, vague, and non-invasive. "He needs surgery. He needs to rest. The tour will be postponed," they said. And fans accepted it because that's what you do when the artist you love says they need to heal. But nobody knew the stakes. Nobody knew he was inches away from losing not just the tour but his life as he continued speaking. His voice grew more reflective, like someone who had walked through fire and come out scorched but standing. They say everyone has two lives, he told them. And the second life starts when you realize you have one. Something about the way he said it, slow, intentional, almost reverent, made it clear that this wasn't a philosophical line he found online or a quote he memorized as part of a performance. This was his truth. A truth paid for in hospital nights, in whispered fears, in moments where the world dimmed and vision blurred and he didn't know what tomorrow would look like. You should be living your life how you want. He added, his eyes scanning the crowd. If we have to do this again, it can only get better. It wasn't just advice. It was a confession of how tightly he had been gripping control, how much pressure he had carried, how much of his life had been spent trying to outrun expectations, his own and everybody else's. Donald Glover has always been a perfectionist, someone who pushes himself past the limits most people wouldn't dare approach. But perfectionism comes with a cost, and for him, that cost nearly became irreversible. Now, for the first time publicly, he admitted just how close he came to losing everything. Fans listened in stunned silence, many with their phones lowered for once, unsure whether filming this moment was even appropriate. Some held their breath. Others placed hands on their chests. A few wiped their eyes. It was that kind of moment, the kind you don't expect at a festival. The kind that creeps into your memory and stays there long after the last note fades. Donald Glover wasn't just revealing a health scare. He was revealing a transformation. He was revealing a rebirth. And in some ways, he was revealing the truth behind his silence, the truth behind why the New World Tour dissolved into unanswered questions. He wasn't stepping away from the stage to rest. He wasn't disappearing to realign his creativity. He wasn't working on a secret project in the shadows. He was fighting to stay alive. Fans had spent months speculating. Rumors swirled online. Maybe the tour wasn't selling well. Maybe there were disagreements behind the scenes. Maybe he wanted to pivot back to acting or take a break from performing. Some thought it was just classic Donald Glover unpredictability. Others thought it was a marketing stunt. Theories multiplied endlessly, but the truth was far more human. He was alone in hospital rooms, navigating doctors' explanations that blurred together. He was waking up from surgeries, feeling the heaviness of a body stitched back together. He was lying in bed wondering if he'd ever perform again, if he'd ever move the same, sing the same, breathe the same. He was trying to figure out what it meant to be a father, an artist, a partner, a person, all while his body was sending him message after message. Slow down, and he didn't listen. Not at first. The stroke came when he was pushing himself. The foot injury came when he kept going. The heart discovery came only because medical staff insisted on further tests. Each issue was like a warning shot, a flare in the night sky, each saying, "You are not invincible."